extra salaries. And after that, we'd have to figure out where the money's going to come from. But that's what budgeting is about. But those are 3 priorities that we set by law. So what did the president say? He said, may not get your Social Security checks if the Republicans get their way. They're going to push grandma off a cliff. We need to get beyond that. I was in a private meeting with the Vice President and the President. The Vice President was sitting next to me, and I asked him a couple questions. I said, look, don't you think we could fix Social Security where we'd have enough money for the next generation if we just told the next generation they're going to have to wait a little longer to get it? We've done it once before. In 1983, Reagan and Tip O'Neill, Republican and Democrat, got together and said, it's broken. We're going to fix it by letting the age go up gradually. I think you can. Biden shook his head yes. President, I asked him directly the question. He didn't say directly yes or no, but he did listen. And we had a reasonable conversation in private. So really, there is some hope for discussion up there. But then in public, they'll say Republicans are going to push grandma off the cliff in a wheelchair. So it doesn't help a lot of the public rhetoric. Democrats say rich people need to pay more of their fair share. I can agree with that conclusion to a certain extent. If you're talking about taxes, rich are already paying. There's a progressive income tax, and the top 20% of the top 1% of wage earners, those paying more than $1 million or more than $1 million, they earn 20% of the income, and they pay 38% of the income tax. So most of them do. Now there are exceptions, and I'm all for getting rid of the exceptions. Warren Buffett says he doesn't pay any, and his secretary pays more. Let's fix that. The way they do it is you make $100 million a year, you leave it in your business, and then you borrow from your business, and you pay back to your business, and you don't take any salary. There are ways to fix problems like that. General Electric gets a whole lot of these green tax credits from the president, doesn't pay any taxes, and then they blame it on us, but they were tax credits that the Democrats gave to them. We can fix that where everybody is paying taxes. I don't have a problem with that. I can also accept what the Democrats say when they say the rich need to bear more of the burden. I would do it on the benefit side. I would say, let's don't tax more people. Like if you've got somebody in your town that makes $300,000 a year, but he employs 10 people, let's don't tax them more. They'll hire 9 people then. Let's tax them less or keep it the same so they'll hire more people. Fight for the American dream that everyone in our country could have an opportunity. And I believe our country can grow out of this, but we have to get growth again. But I think with good policy, and I think we have to change some more faces, we can get back to a time when our country can thrive again. And I thank you very much for coming out today, and I'll be happy to do some questions. Thank you.
Behind your recent votes.
The president requested that it go up $2.4 trillion. And to let you know how long that lasts, we're spending up $1 trillion about every 6 months. So it's a little more than a year's worth of spending. It may get through the next election. It's the largest request in raising the debt ceiling ever. During this administration, we will add more in debt than we've ever added for all 43 previous presidents combined. So it's an acceleration of the accumulation of debt. I do recognize, though, that a country, particularly that spends more than it takes in, has to borrow. So I was never opposed to ultimately raising the debt ceiling, and never opposed to paying the interest on our debt, which is what we will call default. I did point out and introduce legislation that said that we bring in $200 billion a month in tax revenue, and our interest payments $20 billion. So I pointed out and said repeatedly to the president he needed to quit scaring people, because he scared the marketplace. For a month they've been scaring the marketplace, saying we could default. There was absolutely no question that we would never default. We have plenty of tax revenue. August 2nd was a deadline of sorts, but we always had plenty of money to pay the interest on debt. Now, what it points out is that we don't have enough money to pay for 30% of government. Our tax revenue pays for about 70% of government, and 30% is borrowed, 30 to 40%. In fact, I think the statistics are we spend $100,000 a second, and we borrow $40,000 a second. And that should alarm us. So I never said that I wouldn't vote to raise the debt ceiling, but I said I would vote to raise the debt ceiling if we had significant budgetary reform. And everybody can have a different definition of that. My definition of significant budgetary reform is you're going to quit doing what you've been doing and doing something a lot different. To me, that means that you would have a plan to gradually balance your budget. And the balanced budget amendment approach is what we were in favor of. That takes about 8 years to balance your budget. The amendment says 5 years. We figured it would take 2 to 3 years. It would have to come back to the states. And even that's a compromise, because I'm not getting the balanced budget amendment. I'm sending it to you, and you have to get it because it has to come back and be voted on in the states. But that's kind of the way the scenario went back and forth. They create a little bit of a narrative on TV that one side's unwilling to compromise. But I said I would vote for Harry Reid's plan, which was the Democrat plan, if he would compromise and attach a balance.